Hello, and welcome to our final segment of our Meet the MS-MIS Faculty Director series, a series that's dedicated to conversations designed to provide an in-depth look at what makes the University at Buffalo's MS-MIS program and its people so special. My name is Aaron Shaw. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment for our full-time MBA and MS programs, and I have the absolute pleasure of being joined today by one of those very special people, the MS-MIS Program Faculty Director, Dr. Pavan Mulgund. Pavan, welcome and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Aaron. Very pleased to be here.
Now, before we get started, if you've missed either of the first two segments, Pavan provided us with a ton of great details about himself, his role as the MS-MIS Program Faculty Director, as well as going and taking a deep dive into the MS-MIS program as a whole. And you can view either of those first two segments in our digital library, and I'll show you how to do that before we wrap up today. But in this final segment, we'll be taking a close look at the relationship and the connections between the MS-MIS program, the University at Buffalo as a whole, the Buffalo community, and potential career pathways for students. So without further ado, here we go. So Pavan, first question in this particular segment, what opportunities and challenges do you see at the university level?
Well, that's a pretty interesting question and a broad one at that. And I'm going to talk about it mostly from the student perspective. So from their point of view, I see there are some very interesting opportunities that are emerging. For example, the emerging role of the Blackstone Launchpad, for example. So there are opportunities where our students can work with startups that are just being conceptualized. And believe it or not, I've spent an entire decade in industry working as an engineer, but I never had an opportunity to see how my work actually translates to success for the company. I wrote this complex codes, but I don't know what happened to them after they were released. And that's something that happens to a lot of engineers, despite the number of years they've worked in the industry. But here is one opportunity where you could work with a startup and see how your work actually shapes the product. So that's one valuable opportunity. Now, similarly, there are so many others. Now, there's a big entrepreneurship clinic that's coming up within the Buffalo region. And that's, again, an enormous opportunity for students to engage in. In addition to that, our increasing collaboration with Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus and with Infotech Niagara. So we do things like shadow the executive program. Of course, in addition to the guest speaking opportunities that we have, we're also looking at engaging our students into some of these meaningful opportunities. Yeah, and as such, there are other opportunities in terms of publication potential. So if you look at it, we are an ISACA approved curriculum. So some of our students actually go on to get certified in different certifications. They also write white papers and literature that for practitioners, not necessarily scholarly articles, but practitioner oriented articles, and they get published and widely read. So those are some of the opportunities that lie in terms of what students can do. Now, with regards to the university at large, I see some interesting opportunities with potential collaboration with large MOOC players. In fact, some of us are already building courses on Coursera. For example, I'm offering a course on SQL for product managers, which will be out sometime mid-September. So interesting amalgamation of online platforms and education are emerging, and some of our students may be able to benefit out of those opportunities along the way.
Yeah, that's exciting stuff. Thank you very much. So moving on, what role do you see the MS-MIS program playing in the larger School of Management, University at Buffalo, and Buffalo communities as a whole?
And that's, I see that in the near future, I see that our program will go on to get more students and attract students from different groups per se, as I was pointing out, we might end up having a lot of non-traditional students along the way. But in some sense, I see that our program has potential to become one of the flagship programs of the School of Management and University at Buffalo at large. And we are also exploring opportunities where we might participate in some benchmarking and ranking from external sources, and we believe we are right there at the very top. And so those are some things that we'll eventually pursue. Now, in terms of Buffalo ecosystem, I'd like to see more of our alums stay in the Buffalo, New York region and contribute towards the success of Buffalo Niagara community per se. And if you realize, it's not such a bad place to be in terms of technology employment. So we have some of the unicorn companies emerging here in our backyards, actually. So ACV Auction being one of them, now Agnomi being another, and we just had a food startup that has been funded recently. So there are great opportunities within the Buffalo Niagara region, and I just hope that some of our students will contribute towards the success of this region per se.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, moving on to what I feel is a very important topic, timely and meaningful, is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I'd like to ask you, what does diversity mean to you?
It's a range in itself, the topic of diversity. Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, of course, there is diversity in type of the student audience we get. So, for example, there are domestic students vis-a-vis international students. Now, and then there are, of course, the traditional students who are degree seeking and they are full-time students, to non-traditional students who are taking course after course and keep a day job. Mm-hmm. So, but in addition to that, I do believe that the bigger challenge is the whole cognitive diversity per se. And that, I think, is an important thing to be highlighted, because just because two people come from same region or they look similar doesn't mean they are the same. There are a lot of cognitive differences along the way. And I think in some of our class projects, we see that when such diverse thinkers come together, very unique solutions emerge. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes it so interesting. And I think some of the great products have been built where we have team members who complement each other in their thought process. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, and that's in some sense the true diversity and the true value of it. So to be honest with you, in terms of diversity, one of the things we are trying to do is we encourage our students to work in different local companies where they are probably going to be the first international candidate. So that gives them an opportunity to see the world in a very different perspective. Also, it helps us overcome some of the stereotypes we have in mind. So, for example, there are assumptions being made about people all the time, and I think once you begin to work in a truly diverse environment, you begin to question a lot of those stereotypes, and then ultimately you realize that they're not true at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you hinted at it a little bit there towards the end, but how are you thinking about how UB and the MS-MIS program can prepare a more diverse set of leaders to graduate in the future?
Okay, so there is a lot going on at the School of Management level. So in fact, if you look at it, in a couple of our courses, there is a deliberate attempt to bring people who come from a non-traditional background and who have gone on to succeed in the technology industry. So, for example, there are several stories of single moms who pretty much took a break for a decade, but then went on to become CEOs of firms. So we bring in people like that to talk to our students. That's one way of achieving it. Second, there is a lot of talk about mindfulness training, and there are workshops and webinars being conducted on those topics. And that's another important aspect that we need to address. And some of our students, for example, get a chance to attend the Grace Hopper conference. These are places where diversity is celebrated.
Mhm.
And that kind of one, it introduces them to some of these ideas, but essentially, some of them eventually go on to become leaders in those aspects. So that's a very valuable component of our program. But I also see that, believe it or not, there are a few of our students who have started working for NGOs on the side. In fact, one of the alums of the program works for a Middle Eastern refugee institute here, where she teaches young children from these places essentially about value of cybersecurity and
Mhm.
things like that. And we also run programs for high school students from a variety of different backgrounds, and educate them on hygienic phone usage, internet usage, and so on and so forth. So we give students some opportunities to participate in it. At the same time, we offer them training and resources to learn about why is it so important to be appreciative of these issues.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's all insightful and amazing initiatives that are happening both at the MIS level, School of Management, as well as UB. So for my final question, again, I want to revisit a topic that we had discussed in a previous segment in terms of career outcome, but keeping in mind all these connections that we've discussed thus far, and then taking a look at success. And obviously everybody has a different definition for success, but in relation to this conversation, from a prospective student standpoint, a lot of them want to know, what does it all mean, in the end, in terms of career outcome and opportunity. So in light with success, what does success look like if an MIS student ultimately gets the job that they want? And I want to reemphasize want.
Okay. Well, I can answer this question in so many ways, but let's start with the one that probably is bothering a lot of our students anyways. One, success basically means in a year, you would have paid out your student loans. Okay. Now, I mean, of course, depends on how well you manage your finances. But let's say you come into a program, you spend about $30,000 and you graduate with a $100,000 job. It's basic mathematics, right? If you save the money enough, you will pay it out in 1 year. So one of my definitions of success is that. So in terms of ROI, we're arguably, as I keep saying, we're the best, probably the best program in this country. Second, especially for the MSMIS, where we are up there. Now, second, I think the definition of success varies considerably based on who you ask. But what we do is we give you opportunity to choose the path that you want. In the sense that some of my batchmates who graduated with me a few years ago, they are now at a stage where if they choose, they can quit their job and have their own startup. Or they could just go out there and pursue another career if they're interested in it. Or some of them might end up pursuing a higher education and potentially a PhD, and I'm one example of that. And there are so many options that are available to you, however you decide to pursue your pathway. At the same time, for some people, the definition of success is a decent job, and then they want to get home and be with the family and have a good life. That's definitely another other thing that most can pursue anyways. But we give you a means where you can decide what success is for yourself. And I think that's a great luxury, because a lot of people are just caught up trying to make both ends meet. And in the process, they don't really get to think about what they really want to do for themselves. But as an alum of this program, you will be in a position to actually pursue your own interest and in some sense self-actualize around what you want by the time you probably hit mid-40s. And that, I think, is a reasonable achievement.
I would agree. Thank you very much for that. Okay, that's going to do it for us here today in this final segment. Pavan, thank you so much for providing tremendous insight on how the MIS program is interconnected to different corners of the university, the Buffalo and Niagara region communities, and well beyond. Speaking of connections, though, and for the audience, we're glad that you're considering the UB MS MIS program, but we can't wait to hear from you. So stay connected. And you can do so by using your cell phone's camera to access links through this QR code that's on your screen now. You may have also noticed it in the background of my video, as well as the introductory slide that I provided. But that QR code will take you to numerous links ranging from the ability to schedule a one-on-one admissions advising appointment to further exploring the MIS program, admissions requirements, so on and so forth. As well as browsing and engaging with us on social media, and so much more, including a digital library where you can find this and all the segments for this particular conversation. But for now, we'd like to say take care and goodbye.
Thanks, Aaron.